Hey everybody, I'm Rick Beato.
I'm Brett Shull.
Dave Honorato.
So today we're going to talk about our guitarist pet peeves. Before I go on, remember to subscribe if you're new and ring the bell so you get all notifications. Many of you already know my biggest pet peeve, and I've gotten railed on from my dear friend Sean Daniels. But my pet peeve is people that leave headstock tuners on, okay? This is the biggest offender, the snark, okay? There's nothing uglier than this to have hanging off a guitar, but it's so everywhere now. You can't, it's just hard to even imagine. I don't want to see anything. It just looks so weird. It's just a wart on the end of a guitar, right? Now, this is a polytune. Now, this actually is harder to clip on. The design is actually not as... Well, this design is actually really bad because my kids break these things off. So I hate to say it, it's a really horrendously bad design. But this thing is so hard to pinch that it's almost impossible to put on the headstock. But this polytune at least pops up like that. But for God's sake, just get a foot tuner. What, do people not use foot tuners
and
anymore?
Don't leave your capos on your headstock.
Yeah.
Don't leave your capos. No, but the reason, Dave, you can. I've seen people that have sent me pictures where the rubber actually
it'll eat through the finish. I have a bunch of guitars that have come in, vintage guitars, where they're like, I don't understand, what's this black mark on my white guitar? I'm like, well, it's lacquer finish, it's white. You have black rubber, you now have a permanent black mark in the back of your headstock because and they like, well, that won't come off. I'm like, no, it's embedded in the finish.
Well, it's like those old school guitar hangers, right? That had surgical tubing around. It would stain all the lacquer finishes around the
But why is this design? It's so flimsy. Where did they even come up with that?
Well, I think the whole idea is you can like angle it no matter which way you are. It kind of looks like the Pixar lamp to me.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it's actually the way it's so easy to put on. That's the good thing about this design.
Well, and they are convenient. I've had my fair share.
Look, okay, I use them all the time.
Right. I've had my fair share of snarks. But
never in a video, ever.
I've had probably a dozen snarks because they're great, and for what they are, they're quick and easy, but I've broken all 12 of them. I don't have one right now.
Well, they're like $8. I mean, I go through like 2-3 a year at the repair shop. So
Which, actually, you know why they did it like that? So you have to keep buying them.
Of course.
They're big lighters. That's what they are.
Engineered obsolescence.
Yeah. And the center line in it, to me, is not that accurate, I don't think.
Well, it's strictly on vibration, so it can only be so good.
I invariably always am touching up my tuning when I use this. Yeah. This one is, to me, a little bit better, this polytune, but I prefer foot tuners or rack tuners.
Yeah, if you're going to use, to me,
Does anyone use foot tuners anymore?
I do.
I do. Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
You guys play gigs all the time.
Every gig. I have one every gig. Yeah. Boss TU2.
Okay, so I do use these, but I will never. You will never see one on a guitar in a video ever. And any band that I ever worked with, if I ever saw that, I'd take it and I'd throw it on the ground and step on it. I'm just kidding.
Okay, I've got one. A pet peeve of mine are. Oh God, I'm gonna make some people mad here. Guitar players that use wireless rigs where you're spending your whole time standing in front of your pedal board. Like, unless you're actually running down a 300-foot ego ramp every night, you don't need a wireless rig. And sure, wireless technology's come a long way, and they sound like cables, all that stuff. I get it. But you don't need, especially if you're gigging, you're adding another layer of complexity and another failure point to your rig, another battery to go down, another cable to break, another thing to screw up just so you can not be attached to your pedal board when you're spinning. Like, most of my gigs, I spin in a 10-foot radius around my pedal board.
Yeah, we all do, right, yeah.
I don't need a wireless rig.
I think even on a big stage, man, to me, 20-foot cable, 25-foot cable, I mean, if you're... I don't know, running around like CC DeVille or something, and you're
sure.
But even that, I mean, wireless, I don't.
Okay, so I was playing a gig one time in Erie, Pennsylvania. My old band, it was '99, opening for Def Leppard, and I didn't have a wireless rig, so. And the stage was huge. It was a hockey arena. So so I have my pedal board out as far as it'll go, and then I have my cable, but I can't even get close to the front edge of the stage.
Right.
So I walk out the first time playing, and then all of a sudden there's no sound.
Yeah.
And I look, and the cable's hanging there, and my singer Mark is just going.
Or you'll do the thing where you get the guitar
And there's no
pulled
cool-
out
yeah,
of your
the
hands.
pull,
and
yeah.
you're like, oh,
There's no cool way to plug yourself back in, period.
No.
Did you ever see CeCe DeVille unplug himself
Yes.
on MTV that one
Yes.
time?
That
was one of the greatest. He stepped on his cable. I mean, that's another pet peeve, people that don't wrap their cable.
Oh,
around
Cable
the
come
strap.
on, man.
Yes.
I mean, that's the rookie.
Yes. At
Rookie
least
move.
get it around your strap or up and around. I mean,
No, wait, there's not
yeah.
people on gigs that actually use wirelesses on church gigs. Are there really?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
okay, I get.
I won't name names, but
I
yes.
get more than my fair share of messages on Instagram of people asking me what my favorite wireless rig out there is and which one they should buy.
Yeah.
That are playing in churches. Which, look, nothing against the church players out there, right? Like,
Yeah, no,
that
of course not.
You just don't. You don't need a
I
wireless.
mean, do they
rig.
walk
I'm sorry.
around even?
I don't think so. No, I mean most churches don't have big stages, not big enough to like run across. Unless you're like running into the congregation or something. Like,
Maybe,
you don't need
but
it.
even then, I mean, you're pretty stationary. I mean, it's not, what's the same thing I was saying like about plexiglass.
Oh yeah,
Everything's behind plexiglass. It's
Oh
like,
my
are you
God.
really that loud in a church that you need to put plexiglass up?
Well,
It-
some.
I guess some,
yeah.
but
yeah.
but to me, it's just sort of like really like okay. But my pet peeve would be the was the a couple of years ago the fad was to get George L cables. And take
Oh,
the
man.
ends off and screw them into your, make these make your pedal board, and everything had to be George L because you could custom cut all this, and you don't have to solder anything.
Yeah.
You just stick it in there and you tighten it, and it's great. I can't tell you how many friends of mine would call me up going, I was playing my gig tonight, and my pedal board cut out, and I don't know what's going on.
Yep.
And I said, what cables do you have? Well, I made all these George L cables, man. I went and bought the ends and tightened them, and it was working fine, and then I moved it, and it stopped working, then I move it again, and it works, and I'm like, well, obviously you've got a loose cable
Right.
somewhere. So I had multiple people like, yeah, I took them apart, and it's like, well, what you notice is that the ground doesn't really touch much when it gets in.
It doesn't.
Like, and so,
Oops.
but that was sold as the end all be all for
Yeah.
a couple of years.
Yeah, how did that? That was all marketing, right?
Well, I don't know.
Dude, the
but-
solderless patch cable game is alive and strong today.
Yes,
and
yes.
there are ardent defenders of the solderless
Yes.
patch cable. I'm sure all of you are commenting furiously.
Oh
right
yeah,
now.
I'll be burned at the stake.
But I'll back you up because on multiple occasions I've had solderless patch cable kits. I've probably had 4 different kits, including the George L's over the years. Every manufacturer, every kit I've ever had that I've used on a gig has gone down and failed.
Yes,
At least once.
Right. I used them twice.
Yes.
Both in the middle of a gig, nothing.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, well, that's all I need to know. And
Yeah.
I've had Horizon cables and Belden cables
Right.
for 30 years. I had patch cables on my pedal board that are 25, 30 years
Oh
old.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Switchcraft ends have never
Yes.
failed.
Look, learn how to solder.
Yeah.
Go on Amazon for the price of a really high-end solderless patch cable
Yes.
kit. You can buy a soldering iron, bulk Mogami 2319 cable, and enough ends to
Yeah.
make the world's largest pedal board. Learn how to solder. It's easy.
It's
I did a
easy.
video on it. I actually did a video on this solderless
Yeah.
versus soldered
Yeah.
patch cables. Just make soldered cables. It's
right.
fine. It's not that hard. And for the time, the other thing about soldered cables that drives me nuts is by the time you've put enough cables together for your whole board, your fingers are destroyed.
They're shredded. They're shredded.
You can't even play your guitar for like 3
No.
days afterwards
No.
because the ends of your fingers are all torn up and sore. So,
Yeah, that was
Okay, and then what about the gold, the monster cables?
another
Okay,
one will be burned at the
these
stake.
things. now, anytime anybody would ever come in with these, I'm like, get these out of here, because they're invariably every piece of gear I own. When bands would come in, the ends would get stuck.
Yeah.
They pull the cable out,
Yes.
and there's the ends sticking in there, and half of them don't even fit it. Why do they never fit? They're too big. What is the deal with that?
But monster cable specifically,
Yeah.
I've never used
Like the gold ends.
I won't.
Do they
I
swell
won't
or
say any
something?
brand name, but I'll just say that I used to work for a company who sold those, and 80% would get returned because the ends would literally be just rip right out of the cable.
They rip right out. Yeah.
And they were oversized, and sometimes they would get stuck in jacks. I've actually had
Oh
to
my
take
God.
guitars apart and go in there to get the jack out.
I've had so many
mean,
get stuck
yeah.
in pieces of gear.
And so that was another. I don't know. That was another.
How did that fad ever get started? What was it? Gold conducts sound better, or
Yes,
electricity
well,
better, or something?
and then my opinion about all of that was most of the guys, and I'm not saying guys that, if you're playing super clean and you're really hi-fi and you want it crystalline, it's great. Those cables really do that. But if you want, you're playing a lot of gain and you've got all these pedals, the last thing you need is something very sterile and very clean. You want some dirt. You want that, so it's hilarious. I don't know. And Mogami cable and all those ends are not cheap. So I know guys that have dropped hundreds of dollars. They're like, hey, I just bought $300 worth of cable and I'm going to redo all my cables on. And they call me a week later and they're like, why does it sound so bad? And I'm like, well, what are you running? And I tell them, like, well, your rig it's a rock rig. It's not really going to, it enhances a lot of bad things. You're running fuzz pedals, but you're running a $100 Mogami cable. It's not going to accent. It's going to accent a whole bunch of frequencies you don't want to hear. It's so.
The worst thing, like I never have cables go bad unless I roll over them with a chair,
right?
Or you roll over them with your 412 or something
and cuts
things that roll over. Yeah. But generally, unless you're stepping on them all the time, whatever, generally cables will last forever. I mean,
typically, or the ends will go bad and you just replace the ends.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another reason to not go with cables that have molded ends on them, like the cheapo. Well, I guess I have had monster cables because I have those cheapo monster cables that have the molded ends. You can't service them. You have to.
Yeah, no, you have to replace them.
Yeah, you have to replace all.
I think that's kind of the feature of those.
Yeah. Okay. Since we're on cables, I feel like all of our pet peeves are based around cables, but mine, and you do this, and it drives me crazy. You put a pedal board together of some of the most high-end expensive pedals around. I mean, look, here's a Big Sky right here.
Oops.
And you put this amazing pedal board together and then don't dress the cables at all. Just plug it in with patch cables, leave it. It's just a giant rat's nest. And then you run the whole board off of a one-spot wall-wart daisy chain power supply. Like a big board. You made a video about this, and I'm just watching the video like, oh my God, dude. Oops. Get a good power supply and some good cables.
Well, what I eventually did was instead of the big pedal board we made the video on, I went and bought the small pedal board because I only use about 3 effects if I'm making a video. Right. I just put the ones on that I'm using.
Great, that's all you need.
That works way better.
When we were working on that video, there I almost had an aneurysm looking at the pedal board. It's just like, oh my God.
Yeah, cables. I'm not.
Well, the best thing about it, we're surrounded by about 300 pedals right here, and they're all strewn.
Yeah.
When the guys come over here to make the videos, I say it's the only time I ever get to hear my gear because half the things I've never even played through.
That's true. It's true.
So they were trying out a couple pedals, and I said I haven't used that yet. I've had it for 6 months or so, but not everything, but some things.
Yeah. What else?
Well, I have a whole bunch about strings.
Oh, I'm interested to hear your pet.
Yeah, what's the deal?
I have, dealing with a lot of repairs weekly. I get a lot of different people in, and either people are really adamant about their strings, like they're so overly analytical about their strings, or guys that are just phenomenal players will literally just tell me, yeah, whatever you want to throw on it. So to me, it's kind of like one of those things where, there's thousands of different string companies, and there really is not much difference between most of them. That I've seen, because I put it on hundreds of strings, hundreds a month, and I get all kinds of brands and all of that, and there's really not that much difference between.
See, I thought all strings were made at the same place, and they just.
I've heard that for years.
Different packages.
Yeah, and I've heard that for a long time, and I believe some of that, but I do believe there are a lot of different string companies too, But for the most part, for all the hubbub, like, well, I've got these cryogenic $27 whatever strings on this, and then if you 9 times out of 10, if you hand that guitar to somebody, don't tell them that they're not on there. They're playing, man, this sounds great, it feels great, and everything. They wouldn't know the difference.
Yeah.
And so, but there is this thing where people will come in and say, well, I've got to have these strings, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, outside of maybe elixirs that are really obviously they're elixirs, most people, I've done it. I've put strings on things and said afterward, like, those aren't the whatever brand you get. They're like, really?
No. Just to be fair here, Dave, takes my Les Paul to repair it, and then he gives it back to me, and he's like, "Oh, I changed the pickups out." If you don't like them, I'll put the old ones back on. Right. But they were amazing, and I was like, "Oh, great, thanks, man. I appreciate that."
Although you should clarify, he's not just going to do that to any customer.
No, of course not. Of course
it's only because it's okay.
Yeah, right.
By the way, I changed the pick. Dave, hey, can you do a setup my guitar? Oh, by the way, I changed the pickups out.
Those old ones suck. You don't want those anyway.
I'm not going to refret your guitar when you just need a setup. I mean, it's like...
But
and I heard a new term earlier while we were setting up. Lawyer, what is this?
Blues lawyers.
Blues lawyers. And then one of my dear friends, I hope that Rhett's not talking about Doug.
No, I'm not talking about Doug. Although he is a lawyer.
Doug is a lawyer
who plays blues, but not a blues lawyer.
No, Doug doesn't really play blues. He's a singer. He's a guitar player and a singer. Yeah. Blues lawyer. What is that? I don't know what that is.
I didn't coin this term, so
you will be sued for this.
I will. Yeah. Yeah. Why? Yeah. Of course. You guys are smart in making me explain this. I mean, I think the general idea behind the blues lawyer is the guy that, has a ton of expendable income and chooses to spend that money on ridiculously expensive guitars rather than spending their time practicing or playing those guitars. Which is, hey, that's great. So there's that part of the industry,
Okay, so about maybe 8 years ago or so, do you remember they did a Neil Peart drum set that was all gold? Yes. And they made, I don't know how many of them, and Guitar Center was selling them, and they were $20,000 or something. Yeah, right. And I said, who buys these things? And my buddy Ron was like, lawyers.
Yeah.
Lawyers and doctors.
Right. Yeah.
I said, are there many lawyers and doctors that are Rush fans? Apparently there are.
Hey, maybe those are the guys that are keeping the industry afloat.
I was just going to say, truth be told.
Which is great.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
Truth be told, man, that's probably one of the big legs that's holding everything up. So,
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So another funny story though. That's kind of this is the opposite. So I did a session, not name dropping, but with Josh Freese, who's a famous studio drummer, plays in a Perfect Circle. He played on a million records, and this is I don't know, 15 years ago. So I called him up before he was coming to Atlanta to record. And I said, so what kind of kit do you need? He goes, I don't know, Ludwig, Gretsch, DW. Cool, man. What size kick drum do you want? 22, 24, 26 by 14. What? Yeah, 14, 16 is fine. 18. What about toms? A rack and maybe 2 floors, or maybe just 2 racks and a floor, or just 1 rack and a floor. Well, what size? I don't know. It could be 13, 16, or maybe 14, 16, 18. And I said, dude, you don't care what you play, right? And he goes, no.
Wow. That's
and then that was it. He came in, he killed the parts.
Right. It didn't matter.
Didn't matter. So, and I said, you could have just told me, I don't care, I'll just play whatever you have.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's like, people that try and recreate, other players' rigs or setups or whatever. And it's like, dude, you're not going to sound like Stevie Ray Vaughan because you're not Stevie Ray Vaughan. Like, I could literally go pick up, Derek Trucks SG on stage at a Tedeschi Truck Show, and I'm not going to sound anything like
No,
Derek
you're
Trucks.
Definitely not going to sound like Derek Trucks. I will test to that.
Yes, you will.
Brett will never sound like Derek Trucks. No. There's nobody I never talk about Derek Trucks on my channel. I don't think I've ever talked about him. I love Derek Trucks. He is so good.
Yeah.
That we need to just take a minute and just say how good Derek Trucks is.
Okay? As an aside here, I think we will talk about Derek Trucks.
We need Derek to do like a whole episode of Derek Trucks.
I've seen Derek Trucks live probably 12 times, both Derek Trucks Band and Tedeschi Trucks Band. I think we will look back and tell the following generations that we got to see Derek Trucks play live in a similar way to how people say, I got to see Hendrix play. I think he's that level of...
Yeah. The two guys that for me, him and Jimmy Herring. Both of those guys.
Yeah, Jimmy Herring's amazing.
I was lucky enough to get lessons from Jimmy early on, and I mean, he was phenomenal. 30 years ago. He's
the nicest guy you could ever meet.
He's a sweetheart.
Jimmy's so nice,
and he's one of those guys where the one piece of advice that he gave me years ago that always stuck with me. He basically said, don't, as we're talking about this, don't worry about the equipment. Make sure you can play.
Yeah.
Don't worry about what you're playing through. And at the time, he was using like a PV VTM head, and it was, he what he said was true, and I always hark back to that. I'm like, if you can't just plug into something and at least play, then the rest of this is null and void. And it's true.
I always talk about Jack Pearson, man. Dude plays a Squier Strat, a stock like Affinity Series Squier. I was on the Blues Cruise with him 2 years ago and caught all 3 of his sets. And all 3, he just walked up with his guitar. I think maybe he had like a tube screamer sitting on top of his twin that he just left on for the whole set, and has some of the best guitar tone I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
With a stock Squier, and just whatever's there. Doesn't matter.
And one of the cliche lines, "It's in your hands." It is.
Yeah.
There is a big truth to that. So, people always say, "Why can't I get this tone? Why can't I get that?" Like you said, you're not that guy. You can try to replicate, and we all try to do our favorite players. There's always points.
Although the one thing that I never get that is people that try to sound like Alan Holdsworth.
Well,
and there's so many people that try to sound like Alan Holdsworth, and Alan had two sounds. He had a clean sound, and he had a distorted sound that was amazing. And it doesn't matter what he played through because it always sounded.
Well, I mean, perfect example. I heard Scott Henderson say one time. He was like, again, like we're talking about. You could have the same equipment, the same, but there was only one Alan Holdsworth. And so the best of the best even know that's like there's this level, and then there's Alan's over here, and there's a few guys like that, and it's just like
But Alan went through so many rigs, and he always sounded like himself.
It's like himself
in the hands. I mean, he played a Lab Series L5. He played. I mean,
he played a syntax, and he sounded like that. I mean, that's. It's like you're talking about non-brute consummate, and I was just like. Yeah, and it's still him though. Even when he's playing a syntax, it's Holdsworth. It's insane. But
that's really the definition of it's in your hands.
It is. It really is. And so that I don't know. Alan is just a whole nother thing in itself. That's just But you're right. He had I saw him play baritone Steinbergers. I saw him play every amp imaginable from solid state to tube.
Why did he always keep switching stuff though?
He was always on search for tones. He just like his playing. He was always going for the next thing. He was trying to find something.
But didn't he always want a guitar that played like his SG or something? Or?
He did. Yeah. From what I can see in a lot of the interviews that they talked to him about, he was like, the SG had its inherent problems, but that was the guitar I always sort of used as a benchmark to try to make better, or at least get to that level and make it better.
Oh, was he talking about the Les Paul SG that he played, or a later SG?
Yeah, he played a
3-pickup.
He had a 3-pickup SG custom Les Paul, and he did. He had that refretted a few times, so I think he might have actually flattened the fingerboard a little bit more than it was originally. But he liked ebony fingerboards because of the SG custom, and he liked the thinness of the body, the double cut that you get way up high. There's no obstruction.
Yeah.
But yeah, all his guitars, even from the Carvins to the Steinbergers and all the other stuff that he used, he always said my basis was always kind of harking back to that SG and then trying to make it better.
Well, that's the perfect example of the tone is in your hands.
Yeah, exactly. It is. Yeah, I mean, he played carbon fiber guitars, he played everything, and it still always sounded like him. I mean, the 5 times I saw him was always. Second to the last time I saw him, he was actually playing baritone Steinbergers that had extended necks, and I'm thinking, laughing because I'm looking at these guitars sitting on these stands on stage before he comes on. And I'm looking at him going like, okay, what has he got going on now? Because this was before he had recorded with it, so he kind of had done this gig, and it was like people, all the guitar players now, it's like, what is that? What is And so he turns around and it's this baritone, and he just starts playing way. All over down the neck, and we're all just laughing because we're all just sitting there going, and only Holdsworth could do that and make it work, and he didn't use it all the time, but he got really super low with it. It was cool. It was very cool. But yeah, his hands, I mean.
So we started out actually tonight. One of the first things we were talking about are guitar players whose records didn't sound like their guitars didn't sound good on records, and it kind of morphed into our pet peeves. But I was talking about, for example, there are some Wes Montgomery records where, I'll talk about the best sounding Wes records: Portrait of Wes, and the Boss Guitar, and Full House.
Yeah, Full House was great.
Those are amazingly good sounding. But Wes had some records where his guitar sounded unbelievably thin. And where he was not served well by it.
Yeah.
He played Standell amps, I think, back then.
Standell, he used, what was the other one? He used some Magnetones for a brief period. He was kind of all over the place, so he always used Fenders on and off, I think, when he was on the road. He could always get them.
Yeah.
But
he had records that where his guitar didn't sound.
Even some of the later pop cover records.
That's right, the CTI records.
Those records were way too slick. He was buried in the mix, and there's a lot, but there's a lot of guys like that.
One of the saddest things to see, I hate to say it, is, and I used to watch this with my son Dylan when he was a baby, is that Wes is playing right before he died. It was 1968. on some show. He's wearing, I think, like an orange tux.
Yeah.
And he's faking along with one of his hits, and he's smiling, and he's awesome.
Yeah.
And kids, anytime when my kids were babies, you'd play Wes on TV, on the screen, any videos of him, that's an amazing thing about YouTube, is that you can actually see Wes. Yeah. And Wes would smile, and kids are so engaged with him. He had so much fun and joy in the way he played, but to watch him play with a tux in front of an audience not plugged in and fake along was like,
right. How wrong is that?
That was totally wrong. So,
but he smiled the whole time.
He did smile. He was like, okay, it's the gig.
It's right. Yeah.
I mean, the sad thing is he died a couple months after that. I mean, that was a real tragedy right there. That's one person that I was alive during his lifetime, but never got to see him play.
Yeah.
So, anything else here, Rhett?
Back to pet peeves. I think the only other thing I could think of, and again, I'm about to polarize some people.
Oh boy.
I can't get behind super flame top quilty crazy wood top guitars. I just think
I don't like them at all.
They're so.
I don't like them at all.
They're tacky, man.
No. I mean, I have this. Okay, so my 594, my is beautiful.
Yeah, there's a tasteful. Okay, look,
that's done incredibly well. But I'm talking about the super flame. Some guitars that are super flame top like that are
quad A, ridiculous flame, and it looks like it's on fire. And it's a lot of times they'll do them in weird colors, like I don't know, like a lime green or something. It's like, come on.
I think that it's. I mean, for me, it's that I didn't grow up with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, when did that start? I mean, you'd see Les Pauls, you could see through the finish, but most guitars were painted when I was growing up, right?
Well, it kind of started with the 70s thing where it was a bunch of like exotic woods with brass hardware, and then they took it to the 9s and the 80s and 90s. They started, what's the most pinstripe top you can put on something? Yeah. Abalone shell was a big, green abalone shell inlays had to be, Gold hardware has always been, I don't like gold hardware, and I'm one of those...
Okay. I don't either. I think it looks hideous, except on a Les Paul Custom
or Mary Kay Strat.
Yeah, I can go there. I mean, to me, gold hard was all. It just looks cheap to me. It kind of looks it doesn't. I don't know.
I like it when it wears a little bit, like
but see, to me, then it's kind of it looks like nickel, which I like nickel.
Yeah, nickel.
You know what though? When back in the 70s, I remember the late 70s Les Pauls. The gold would almost rust or something. What's up with that?
Well, some of them they actually put a clear coat over the gold to try to protect it so it wouldn't wear as quickly.
Okay.
But what would happen was moisture would get under the clear coat.
And they would flake.
And it would actually flake and rust.
Yeah.
Yeah. It depends on what metal it was used.
And I don't know. I used to see them back then. I never see any like that. Was it just...
No, I still see it. It all depends on your what your chemical makeup in your body is.
Yeah.
Some people are just really, like, I see guitars I'll get guitars in that you would not believe. Like, I've had bridge saddles that were completely rusted through and rounded off to the point and frozen into the bridge because the guy's palm.
Oh my God! I've had bands come in I had one band that would come in and the singer's hands sweated so much that I'd hand him the guitar with brand new strings.
Yeah.
And he'd hand it back after one pass, and it sounded like they were flat wounds.
Yeah.
It was gross.
Yeah. I'll shoot. My hands are kind of like that. Like all the hardware on my guitars, you can tell everything's worn through and kind of oxidized. And when I put strings on, 2 days maybe, and they're dead.
Man.
Wow. Yeah.
I can play guitar for months and months and months, and
I'll come over to his house and just ruin strings. I'll pick up like 3
He
guitars and play them, put them down.
I know that my gold top is totally dead.
And you are right about this because I remember I restrung your J50 one time. And it was 4 or 5 months later, I worked on it, and I'm like, I was the one who put these strings on because I know how I tie my strings on them.
And they sound brand new.
No, they were fine, but I'm laughing because I'm like, he didn't even change his strings in the last 6 months.
No, I never changed my hands don't sweat at all.
No, I know. I'm pretty bad about it. I'm not real bad, but because I always wipe my stuff down just because I'm
because you're that kind of guy.
And I'm like, it saves a whole lot of hassle. So that's all. But, it will, strings, though, you'll eat strings like crazy, but yeah. Well, there's a whole bunch of pet peeve stuff about keeping your stuff clean, but I won't go into that.
My pet peeve are guys that wipe their guitars down after.
Yeah, it's like,
So we want to know what your pet peeves are. I know that half of you hate us already. You hated us within the first 5 minutes.
We're the 3 pet peeves.
We're the 3 pet peeves.
There's probably some lawyer who's got like 4 flame top PRS and just writing me an email right
when
now.
When I read the stuff, if I see stuff on Reddit about me where people hate me and everything, I call my friends up and I read the stuff to them and we laugh about it.
We laugh about it. Yeah. Right.
It's
man. It's the internet. Like, what are you gonna do,
dude? If you can't take this stuff seriously.
No,
it's rock and roll, man. Come on, really? Yeah. I mean, I get guys all the time. Oh, you look like this dude, or it's the guy from H3 or whatever. Great, awesome. I wish I was making his money. Hell, whatever. Shit, come on. I don't care, whatever.
That's great.
So leave your comments, leave your pet peeves in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to Rhett's channel. Subscribe to Dave's channel. We'll see you later.
See ya.
The dude from H3, whatever.
Dude, that is amazing right there.
Yeah, man. Shit, come on.
That's oh man, that's our